All right, Rambam Sefer Misvot Aseh, positive commandment. We're up to Misvah Kuf Yod Gimal number 113. So now you can see the flow of the Rambam after Korbanot going into Tumah and Tahora. As part of that, three different Misvot on the Mesorah and Sarah discussion, and now gonna top that off with a essential Tahora Mizvah, and that will then lead into other type of dedications. You can say non-sacrifice offering, but other type of dedications and obligations of offerings and gifts, those type of Mizvot. So here we go. Mizvah Kof Yod Gimal number 113. Hishu Sivanu La'asot Para Aduma Kedei Sheyeh Afaraha Mizuman L'Misha Yistarech Elav Taharat Tumat Met. Here it says to make, it means to prepare. What do you mean to prepare a red heifer, a para aduma? It means to follow the instructions of the Torah. You end up burning it completely. And so that, the Rambam explains, its ashes after burning it can be accessible and ready for us, for anyone who needs tahora from tumat met. As we've already mentioned a number of times before, someone who contracts the most severe level of impurity of tum'ah by being either in contact with a deceased or in the vicinity of a deceased, more than just immersing in the mikveh tahora and waiting until the evening, that person has a 7-day process of purification, which can only be realized through the usage of the ashes of paradumat mixed with mayim hayim from the Bet HaMikdash and sprinkled on that person on the 3rd and 7th day from his time of tum'ah or discovering his tum'ah. That's this mizvah, having those ashes ready to go and accessible and prepared for those situations. Kimo Shamar, as the pasuk says in the source, V'hayata la'adat b'nei Yisrael, there in Parashat Chukat, the key word in that phrase is v'hayata, which means, and this mizvah of the red heifer and burning it and making the ashes, it has to be there, ready, prepared, and at the access to accommodate Am Yisrael. One of the Masechtot of Mishnah and Seder Taharot is called Para, and you guessed it, it addresses this mitzvah. All right, now, what I discussed that we're going to segue into this new series, starting with the Misvah Kof Yud Daled number 114. Hisha Sivanu Ladun Bedin Arche Adam. So there, also in Parashat, not in Chukat, is a discussion in the Torah of Misvot of what's called Arachin. There's a Masechet called Arachin. Literally, Arachin means valuing or estimations. And it's a type of pledge that a person makes and an acceptance upon himself to give something of value to the Kodesh. To the Kodesh means, it translates into the Bet HaMikdash, redeeming something's value. It goes to Bet HaKabayit, it goes to maintenance of the Bet HaMikdash. And here it says Arche Adam, which means the value or estimation of a person. Vehu, he, for instance, Mishu Amar Archi Alai or Erech Piloni Alai. This is the terminology of a neder. Someone who says my value is upon me, or the value of somebody else is upon me, is again a form of a vow of a neder, where you are accepting or taking an obligation upon yourself. When I say my value or person A, person B's value is upon me, that's what I'm accepting as an obligation and a pledge, and a monetary pledge. Says the Rambam, V'im haya zachar, yifra kach v'kach. V'im hayehi necheva, tifra kach v'kach. The Torah gives us an itemized list of value, of translated monetary value in shekalim, depending on the gender and the age. So you have values of men and women respectively from ages 20 to 60, above 60, 5 to 20, beneath 5. So that there's any person that you can point to and say, his value is upon me. His ayrech is upon me. That can fit into the rubric the Torah created for us as to that gender and that age equals that value. And engaging in that mitzvah, when you make that, type of pledge, coming through with it based on the Torah's instructions, is a mitzvah aseh. As Rambam says, lefi hashanim, based on years, kimo sheba bekatuv lefi anyan ma'arich. So based on what the Torah says and what the expression of the person making this vow. V'hu omro, as the Torah says, the source for this mitzvah, be'erkecha nefashot, based on evaluation of people. Uchvar hitba'aru mishpetei mishvazov v'masechet arachin, as we said, there's a masechet gemara called arachin, which addresses this mitzvah. Mitzvah Kov Tetvav number 115. Ki shesivanu bedin arche behema. So now it's also possible to make a pledge where you take upon yourself the value of an animal. Arche behema. V'hu omro v'amida behema lefnei Adonai v'yarich otah kohen. The pasuk and the source for this mitzvah says that if someone were to do so, he has to present that animal, the behemah, before Hashem, meaning he brings it to the area of the Harabayit, and the Kohen is going to make an evaluation. Here, the Torah does not delineate different types of value as per species of animal or age or gender, etc. Rather, this is going to be somewhat subjective, but it's going to be a evaluation of an expert, one of expertise, so that it's hopefully accurate. But the what you owe based on your pledge will be based on the decision of the authority of the Kohen. Also, this discussion of that mitzvah is in that same masechet. Misvot Kov Tet Zayin number 116. It's also possible to make such a pledge regarding a real estate structure, a house. And that is the source. The person sanctifies his house. Now that, as we're going to see in the next mitzvah, is going to be based on some other factors in terms of its value. Is also an arachin, but that will depend on the value of the house, depends on where you are in the Shemitah year cycle and where the house is located. As we see now, that discussed more elaborately in Misvot Kov Yod Zayin number 117, an estimate evaluation of a pledged field. Vihu omra, meaning land. So the other was a structure of real estate, and now this is the actual land of real estate. The source is a person might pledge a field or land from something of his inheritance. In other words, belonging to a certain tribe, his original right to that land, so his original ownership of land that has passed down to him as a descendant from that tribe, or a land that is his right now only because he purchased it from someone else, and at some point during the Shemitah 49-year cycle, and he's makadish and sanctifying that and its value. And also, there's another pasuk that highlights this mitzvah, and that it says with another detail, specifically if you sanctify and pledge the value of your original land ownership, the Torah says it's erech, it's value, and therefore what your obligation is lefi zar'ah, based on its seed, or really means based on its productivity. How much, which has to do with size of the land, that field and also location can produce. How much can it yield? How much produce can it yield? Ubesadeh mikna Another source regarding specifically a purchased field, which is not in your original ownership and from your descendant or from your past lineage, it says, and the Kohen will evaluate the value of this pledge. You have to remember, of course, that depending on what year in the cycle of Shemitah you purchased land is its value, because you're going to have to give it back to the original landowner by Yovel. For the most part, there aren't permanent purchases, so that if there's 2 years left, or if there's 25 years left, obviously this field will be less or more of a moneymaker, and therefore its value is based on that. Okay, so that's the end of his discussion. Same masech. Now, the person who's now reading should not think that the previously mentioned, the aforementioned 4 Misvot of pledged evaluation, pledged value, namely people, animals, houses or structures, and land, don't think that because they're so connected, that the proper thing, and my job, my objective here, that Rambam says, is to count them all as one mitzvah. Don't think such a thing. There are 4 separate mitzvot, because each one has a different set of laws that the other one does not have. But still in all, the Torah chose to use the same root word, erech, ya'aricham, ya'archenu, alkecha, etc., because of that commonality they have, which is that you're pledging value, right? But otherwise, the determining factors of that value and the specifics of these mitzvot are distinct from each other. For that reason, these different types of pledged values should not be incorporated into one mitzvah, rather 4. If you just think a little bit, you'll get to that conclusion. All right, Misvah Kof Yud Chet, number 118. So now we're speaking about pledged values. Let's talk about where one may violate a pledged value or hekdesh. Hisha sivano shihye komi shiyehene min hekdesh mosif chomesh or ochel chodesh. Somebody that derives benefit from something that was sanctified and not yet redeemed. So if I sanctified an animal or furniture or whatever it might be, I called it hekdesh. Even not the last 4 mitzvot of arachin, just talking about general pronouncing something, so to speak, hekdesh, sanctified. Then it's has to be appraised, and then it has to be redeemed, and you have to give the monetary value to Beit HaKabayit, to the maintenance of the Beit HaMikdash or other. If one would derive benefit from something that is currently in the status of hekdesh, where somebody sanctified it, or if somebody ate kodesh, wrongfully ate the meat from a korban, basar kodesh, where it wasn't his place to do so, so obviously he's got to return that value. He owes it, and mosif homesh, he has to add a 20% penalty. It's really a 25% penalty. It's 20% from the outside, as they say, right? On 100, 25 is 20% of 125, but it's really 25% of 100. But that is a misvat aseh, to add this penalty, the Torah built-in penalty of this wrongful benefit. כלומר, אוכל תרומה בשכחה משלם מה שאכל, ושיעור מה שנהנה, וזו ספר חומש. As an example, someone derives benefit from teruma. You're a non-Kohen. You had no right to do so. So you're going to have to, pay back what you ate, what you derive benefit from, and add this fifth penalty. And the source is ve'et asher hata min hakodesh yishalem ve'hamishitav. Pay it back, and it's fifth, and it's 20% penalty. Ve'amru gamken ve'ish ki yochal kodesh b'chacha. Another source for this, where the Torah says elsewhere, if you were to eat here now the meat of kodesh, right, without unknowingly, you're going to have to obviously pay it back, but also the penalty. So that's a Misvot aseh. When you pay the penalty, the Misvot aseh is to charge and for the person to pay that much this is called when someone's mu'il ba kodesh, which is a wrongful activity, but here he did it bishkaga without knowing. There is a masechet called Me'ilah, which is focusing on wrongful derivation of benefit from different modes of kodesh, also mentioned in Masechet Teruma. Mizvah, let's do Kof Yotet. Number 119. That the fourth year of you planting a vineyard is the produce of it, the grapes and the like, are status of Kodesh. The source is in the fourth year, all its produce will be a very interesting phrase, sanctified praise or song, so to speak, to Hashem. V'dino shi'aleh Yerushalayim v'yacherehu sham be'alav kimo ma'aser sheni b'shaveh. And the law is, what does that mean? It's Kodesh. It's not hands off. Just like with Ma'aser Sheni, you must take it and bring it up to Yerushalayim, and you, the owner, can and should eat it over there, or it's redeemed value, or you redeem it and you take the cash up to Yerushalayim. There you buy some food there and eat that other food. This is not one of the matanot kihuna. The Kohen has no right to it at all. Shneimar ve'ishet kadashav lo yihiyeh. Because the pasuk says, and a person, his sanctified or his kodesh status, lo yihiyeh, should be his. What did the Torah just do? Mashach hakatuv kol kadashim untanam kohen. The Torah, with that phrase, really just gave everything that's Kodesh to a Kohen, except for that which the Torah makes exception of. And this is what's left over. In other words, what the Kohen does not keep. Todah ushlamim pesach ma'aser behema ma'aser sheni netar reva'i shel ba'alim. That list, the meat of both the korban todah and all korbanot shlamim, korban pesach, the korban of ma'aser behema, which we discussed, ma'aser sheni, which we didn't do yet, we just mentioned, and what we're dealing with now, netar reva'i, the planting of a vineyard of the fourth year, all are status of kodesh, but don't go to a kohen, rather the owners. וכבר התבהרו משפטי משבזו מושלם, פרק בתרב, מעשר שני, זה מסכת משנה called מעשר שני, and there it deals obviously with the laws of מעשר שני, and also with the laws of neta reva'i, of the planting of the fourth year. Question whether or not other planting of other types of produce, like vegetables, is a mizvah from the Torah or not. It's a separate issue. Here we're just talking about specifically of the vineyard. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.